I wish I had been told that during interviews, panelists are literally judging the book by the cover. They might skim a few pages of your life, but they are literally judging the book by the cover. In this video, I'll share some tips and hacks that will help you in your next interview to present the best cover. Stay tuned. In this video, we'll talk about some tips, some hacks, some rituals that I personally use during interviews, and I think they've really helped me. Some of these tips have gotten me admission to best schools in the world, Oxford, MIT. Number two, some of these tips, they've given me Rhodes Scholarship, Schmidt-Science Fellowship. Two last things before we get into the tips. Whatever I'm gonna share, they are going to help you only if you have the cake. These are icing on the cake. So I'm hoping that you are bringing the cake and I'm bringing the icing. So the cake could be good grades or experiences or whatever you are bringing, right? Whatever I'm gonna share, these are just like little touches, more of like icing on the cake. So last thing that I want to share is that, or rather a disclaimer, these are from personal experiences. So HR guys, don't come for my neck, please. They might not work for everyone, but hey, you watch, take some notes, whatever works for you, you can try and use. This is how I have structured this discussion. We'll talk about the pre-interview things you have to do, and then we'll go into the interview, and then post-interview. A couple of things, common things that I think you already know. So number one, read or reread about the scholarship or about the company you are applying to. Understand what they are looking for. As an example, Rhodes Scholarship, when I was applying, they are looking for leadership skills. They are looking for extracurricular activities. They were looking for good grades, of course. So you want to read and understand, what are these guys looking for? Research interview location so that you are psychologically prepared. Confirm the dress code. If you already have the names of the panelists, research them. Just do Google search or just go to LinkedIn and check them out. Talk to previous beneficiaries or people who've worked in that company or people who've gotten that scholarship. The disclaimer here is that you don't want to be a photocopy of anyone else. So while you listen to their stories, their advice, their suggestions, or while you watch this video, you don't want to copy everything. You want to understand how the process was like according to them, and then you want to tailor it to meet your needs. Reread your essays or your application materials. What did you write in that CV? Maybe your resume or your CV has changed since the last time you applied. Now it's the time to go back to that CV. Hopefully you saved it somewhere. Check what you wrote. Read from sentence number 1 to the last sentence. Highlight key moments, or rather just understand the story that you told those guys. So remember, the panelists are coming in with these materials that you submitted. So you also want to be at the same level, still remembering what you wrote. I would suggest that you go an extra mile and brush your LinkedIn, brush your social media accounts, particularly LinkedIn. Practice stories, practice telling stories, practice telling brief stories. So in a few, I'll tell you some of the hacks or tips that I use to tell my stories. But it's important that you take some time to remember important stories in your life and write them somewhere, and then practice telling those stories. So again, not all the stories in your life, just the stories that match or rhyme with what the company or the scholarship is looking for. So like I mentioned, if they are looking for leadership or extracurricular activities, you want to have at least maybe 2 stories under leadership and 2 stories under extracurricular activities, stories that you can tell briefly. You don't want to spend over 5 hours explaining a story. So For that to happen, you need to write brief stories and then practice reading them loud. Maybe even time yourself at home and see how long you take to tell a story. You don't want the panelists cutting you. If they are stopping you, then you are over sharing or over telling the story. So you don't want to spend so much time. Let's go to during the interview. 2 things that I will share with you during the interview. And I think we forget that, and like I mentioned earlier, they are literally judging the book by the cover. They don't have all the time for you to tell them your life story. If you're lucky, you have maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Otherwise, most interviews are like 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and that is it. So you want to be aware of that. Every answer, every question, you want to seize that opportunity to bring or highlight some of the things from your life, because you don't have all the time. So 2 things I want to share here. Number 1, I tell everyone, my first piece of advice here is stay authentic. You don't want to be a robot and you don't want to copy anybody. So remember, you talked to your friends and they told you, oh, do this and this. You watched this video and I told you, do this and this. But even after doing all that, just make sure that you tailor most of these things. You just copy what works for your scenario and then make sure it's coming out authentically. So number 1 is that bring your authentic self and let your personality come out a little bit. No one wants to be talking with a robot. You don't want to appear like a robot, right? Like you are stiff and you crammed all your answers, and so now they tell us about yourself, and you're just like blah 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 blah. No movements, no gestures, nothing. No one wants to talk with a robot. So let your personality come out. Maybe not too much, just slightly. And then number 2, we'll spend a lot of time here because these are some of my rituals or some of my hacks and tips that I use. Remember, you have a few minutes to present the best cover of your life. So you want to seize every question or every opportunity to do that, to present the best cover of your life or a few pages of your life, best trailer of your life. So these are the things that I do. Number 1, I storify. Or I try to storify. So try and storify most of your answers. When you're telling a story, you want to incorporate as many of these tips as much as possible in your story. H is for humanize. So you want to bring such emotions that the panelists will appreciate. Is for personalize. When you're telling your stories, try and use proper nouns as much as possible, if it's appropriate to use the names. S is for specific. So to be specific, you want to use the 5 W's and 2 H's. So the 5 W's are who, when, where, what. Those W's you get. And then the H's are how and how much. T is time. And I've mentioned again and again that you have to be very careful not to overtell. You don't want to give like very short answers, yes and no. You want to explain, but not over-explain. So it's so hard to judge the issue of time. It comes with a lot of practice. But D is for dramatize. Don't be a robot. Let the emotions come out of you through gestures, through face, through your tonal variation. Add as many of those elements as possible. All those elements don't have to be in your story, but if you have at least 2 or 3, then your story will be really powerful. This is during the interview. The second point to remember, be it while you're telling your stories or whatever answer you are giving, try as much as possible to quantify, just so that we understand how prestigious or how important that scholarship or that award you got is. You don't have to do this all the time, but where necessary, quantify. The third one is structure. As much as possible, try to structure your answers. Again, always remember that these are human beings. You might be number 10th person on that day and they are yawning, they are tired. So what you're trying to do with all these things we are doing is to make your story stand out and for them to remember your story. So a very good example of Missy, so it's, if you were to divide the world's population into 2, you would use age, for instance. So you could say, let's say the world population of people of age 50 and above is this number, and then population of the age 50 and below. So if you are below 50 of age, if you're 50 and below of age, and then above 50, there is no way you can be 30 years and 60 years at the same time. So it's mutually exclusive. But then when you combine these two, they are collectively exhaustive. Like you would have literally talked about everyone. So now number 4. So don't lose me here. We started with storify, quantify, structure. Now here, book and a pen is number 4. So this is what I do, and I encourage my students to do the same. When you go into an interview, have a book and a pen. 3 things that this will do. It will help you record multi-layered questions. So some of the panelists are notorious and they'll bury you in multi-layered questions. They'll say, so Gladys, tell us a situation when you failed on a project, and what did you learn? And going forward, what did you do? So those are literally 3 questions in one. Now, with adrenaline, I promise you, it's so hard to remember all those questions. So a book and a pen will help you write those questions. You want to be very careful not to look at your book throughout. And then number 2, it will help you control the pace of the interview. So if you don't have a book and a pen, there is a temptation that every time they've finished asking a question, you attack the question again. Because of adrenaline, it's you feel uncomfortable sometimes with the silences. So a book and a pen, this is what will happen. When they finish asking a question, if you're not ready to answer, or if you want to allow just a brief moment for your mind to quickly structure your answers, you just pretend. Sometimes you have to you could be pretending. I mean, you could be writing, or you could just be pretending that you are finishing writing the question. Again, you don't want to overstretch that silence or write too many notes. But 3, it will help you loop back to the questions that they had asked. That is just AOB. That is not really important. But when there is a chance, you try and tie your answers together. Most interviews will end with, do you have any questions for us, Gladys? I hope during the interview, your name and your stories have been powerful. And so by this time, your name and your stories are on top of their minds. So you want to end really well. This is what I normally do. I ask thoughtful questions, thoughtful, personal questions. Not personal in the sense of what political party do you support. That might be a wrong question to ask, but like thoughtful, personal in a good way. So I know that you got this scholarship to study X and X at X and X university during your time. If you were to go back to that time, to this time where I am now, is there something that you would change? Is there something that you would intentionally do during your master's or during your PhD to set you apart? Something that I can learn, or something that I can consider when I start my studies. Something like that. Things along those lines. You could be having a genuine question that you want to ask, well and good. But if you don't have, consider thinking about those thoughtful personal questions that will make the panelist to actually pause and think of a clever answer to give you. They just can't give you. It's the questions of, so when will we get the results? That will not make you stand out. I mean, you could ask, but I would say don't ask that question. The secretary or whoever is writing the emails will tell you. So don't ask that. Ask a thoughtful question that will end the interview in a powerful way. Don't forget, well, during the interview, when it's possible, if you already know their names, they might be having their badges. You try as much as possible to mention their titles and names. People like to hear their names. So that is also something that I try to do, so if it's possible. So the last part is post-interview. What do people do post-interview? I was actually thinking, I don't do a lot post-interview, apart from occasionally. I have to confess that I've not done this a lot of times, by writing a thank you email. So on the internet, just so many templates on how to write post-interview thank you letter. So you can consider writing one. You guys, if you have post-interview rituals, hacks, and tips, you can comment down below. I also want to learn. I don't have a lot in this category. So if you stayed till this far, I want to wish you all the best on your interview. Stay authentic. Remember that they are judging the book by the cover. So be very careful. Any question, seize the moment to highlight important things from your life, and important things from your life from their perspective. Understand what they are looking for, and then bring those out. Paint the best cover. Bring the best trailer of your life. And all the best.
A few examples before you go. So this is how I like to answer the question, tell us about yourself. I like to answer this question in a structured way. Why am I emphasizing the need to structure most of your answers? Because number one, it will help you exhaust most of the highlights from your career or from your life. And then it will stop you going off tangents. And number two, and most importantly, it will help you help the interviewer remember your story. So again, what we are trying to do is to imprint our name and our story on the minds of the interviewers. So tell us about yourself. I would go number one, chronological order, where I'll talk about where I am currently and then go back to where I've been. So I'd say currently graduated from X and X uni, where I studied X and X course. I graduated top 1% of my class. I interned at XX company where I learned or I contributed this and this. In school, I intentionally purposed to lead. I was a class leader. I was a leader in sports. I also played soccer. I was a track star where I represented my uni in 2 editions of East Africa University Games. Proudest moment is when I was voted blah, 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 blah. Before X and X uni, I graduated from X and X high school, top 2% of my class. And I know you're looking for an all-rounded, exceptional student. I believe I'm a strong candidate for this job or for this scholarship. So again, what you are highlighting, I'm highlighting leadership, soccer, track, and then I'm mentioning this 1% of my class thing because that is exactly what the scholarship I was applying for was looking for. So they wanted someone who had good grades. And that's why you see I keep mentioning 1% of my class, 2% of my class. They were looking for someone with leadership experience. They were looking for someone with extracurricular activities. And so that's why you see I'm flashing out those moments. So you want to flash out key elements from your career or from your life based on what they are looking for. So you just don't tell a random story. You tell a story, flashing out key elements related to what those guys are looking for. Tell us about yourself. Number two, I would go the Missy way. So Missy is mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. I would tell my academic side and then I'll tell non-academic side of me. So I would say, to understand who Gladys is, I'll tell you the academic side of Gladys, and then I'll tell you the non-academic or things that I do outside class that I enjoy. So academic side of me, I recently graduated from X and X uni where I studied X and X course and I graduated top 1% of my class. I was a leader while in school. Proudest moment perhaps was when X and X happened or when I made this contribution to the school. Before X and X uni, I graduated from X and X 2% of my class, etc. The picture of who Gladys is not complete if I don't tell you the things that I do outside class that I enjoy. I enjoy number one, volunteering, because I like using my energy to serve other people, to serve my community. Number two, I like playing soccer. This is where I've learned most of my teamwork. And I know you're looking for an all-rounded student with good grades and leadership and extracurricular activities. And I believe I'm a strong candidate for this scholarship. And I'm hoping that this scholarship will enable me to study masters at X and X uni as I prepare to be X and X in the coming years. Another easy way you can tell about your now, before now, and after now. Why this is mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive is because anything in your life could be classified as now, in the now category, or before now category, or after now category. So I would say I'm currently working as an X and X in this X and X company, where so far I have contributed this and this, and I've saved the company this and this amount. Before here, I studied X and X course at X and X uni, graduating top 1% of my class. While at uni, I intentionally sought to lead. I was also doing extracurricular activities. I was in soccer, I was in track. I represented my uni in a couple of university games where I won several medals and also raised the profile of our uni. Proudest moment perhaps is when this and this happened, or when I contributed this and this to the school. From now, looking into the near future, I know you're looking for an all-rounded student, and I believe that I'm a strong candidate for this. And this scholarship will allow me to study this and this at this and this institution, so that I prepare myself to be X and X in the coming few years. Then we move on to another example, situational question. They'll ask you, tell us a situation when you demonstrated leadership. Tell us a situation when you worked under stress. Tell us a situation when you could not deliver on a project. You worked in a team. Tell us a situation when. Those kind of questions. I would encourage you to think about structuring those questions in CARL way. CARL, C-A-R-L. C for context, A for action, R for result, and L for lesson or learnings that you got from them. So an example, Gladys, tell us a situation when you demonstrated leadership. Actually, this is a question that I've been asked before, or that I was asked in one of the interviews. So I used CARL method. I painted the context. For you to paint the context, you want to use as many 5 W's and 2 H's as possible. Go back in this video and watch where I explained how to use the 5 W's. So 5 W's are who, what, where, why, those things. H, how, and how much. So I would paint the context. I would say, tell us a situation when you demonstrated leadership. I would say, this is when I was in my second year of X and X uni. I love playing soccer. There was no women's soccer team at the uni. What action did I take? I took the initiative and leadership to form a school team. I would go door to door in the hostels or table to table in student cafe, recruiting female students. What resulted? In 1 year, we had a full team with substitutes, and 2 years after that, we were crowned winners of the regional soccer league. What I learned from that? I can't always wait for an outsider or a manager to cause change. I can be proactive, take the lead, and make positive changes where I am. So actually, you don't have to say, now I'm talking about the context, and then, oh, I'm talking about the action, I'm talking about results. So CARL is just make mental notes, and then you would know that you've talked about context, you've painted the context, then you move to action, you move to result and learning. So it's helping you. This structure is just helping you to paint a complete picture, to also say what you did, or highlight what you did, or your contribution, because that is very important. And then as a result, what came out of your action. And while you're talking about result, I would advise you to quantify, talk of numbers, percentages, things like those. And then importantly, what did you learn? Lesson is talking about lesson or flashing out learning is very important, especially when you're talking about a negative situation or question. Like, tell us a situation when you were unable to meet a milestone. This is actually a question I've been asked in an interview. So you want to be very careful how you answer this question, because I mean, we are human beings, and I know interviewers appreciate that. We all fail on a project. We have negative experiences sometimes, but the most important thing is, what did you learn from that negative experience, or that experience that didn't go well, so that you are able to improve if you meet similar negative experience in the future. So this is what I said. I used Carl. So I painted the context. I said, when I was in my first year of PhD at XX uni, I needed to complete some experiments and run some computer simulations so that I can present my results in a conference at X and X. Sadly, I was operating like I did in undergrad. I was doing most of the things by myself. I was keeping to myself and struggling through it alone. As a result, I wasted so much time. Although the experiments and the computer simulations worked in the end, but it was too late. I missed the conference and I could not present the paper. What I learned? Later, I learned that I should have moved faster had I talked with senior students to tap on their experiences to avoid repeating their mistakes. And also, I should have embraced the fail quick approach to avoid analysis paralysis that wasted so much of my time earlier on. Finally, some questions that might come up. Why should we select you, or why are you the best person for this job? Situation when you worked under pressure. What is your proudest moment? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Greatest strengths and weaknesses? What motivates you? And then any questions for us. So I would recommend that you make a list of up to 20 or 30 questions. Most of those questions are related. And pretty much all of those questions can be answered in a structured way. I would recommend that you have a list of those questions and then think about each question. How would you answer? Which structure would you use? You don't have to use structures all the time, but try as much as possible to think about structuring them so that you are able to exhaust highlights from your life and career, and also to keep you brief, and also to make your story a method. So for instance, why should we select you? You could say, you should select me. I think you should select me because number one, I have experience in this area. For instance, I did X and X in this company, I saved the money there, blah, blah, blah. Number two, I know you're looking for someone with leadership and leadership experiences. I have leadership experiences. For instance, I led in X and X where I did this and this, I contributed this to the company and all that. And number three, you should select me because this and this. So most of the time when you're answering those questions, aside from structuring your answers, also, you should show and not tell. So telling them would be, you should select me because I'm qualified, because I'm a leader, because I like this job. That is telling. But showing is you bringing stories and quantifiable results from the past. That is when you are showing. So most of your answers try to show and not tell.
If you've liked this content, I'll be sharing a lot of personal development hacks, tips in the coming days, as well as interviewing guests on how they are navigating school, career, and life in general. If you like this kind of content, please kindly consider subscribing and leave a comment down below.